Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Defense Podcast. Sorry for changing the background. Some of the brothers actually complained about the video game background. Don't worry, the video game background isn't going away, but I want to use something different because it's kind of raining right now. So I hope you like the background of a raining environment. So anyway, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Defense Podcast. And David Wood has made another video, of course. This guy is like, I don't know. Anyway, he's like so active. Like he puts out video almost like every day. It's quite profound, honestly. But anyway, so he made another video. In this, he accused the Quran of having a mathematical error, apparently. So yeah, let's take a look.
We'll read two verses of the Quran, Surah 4, verses 11 and 12, which are about dividing up an inheritance. Now, unless you're a lawyer who deals with contracts, this passage is going to be confusing at first.
I love how he says, unless you're a lawyer, this passage is going to be confusing because he knows his fan base is stupid. Anyway, let's continue.
Let's read the verses. Surah 4, verse 11. Allah commands you, as regards your children's inheritance, to the male, a portion equal to that of 2 females. If there are only daughters, 2 or more, their share is 2/3 of the inheritance. If only one, her share is a half. For parents, a 1/6 share of inheritance to each. If the deceased left children, if no children, and the parents are the only heirs, the mother has a 1/3. If the deceased left brothers or sisters, the mother has a 1/6. The distribution in all cases is after the payment of legacies he may have bequeathed or debts. Legacy would be if he left some money to his local imam or something. You know not which of them, whether your parents or your children, are nearest to you in benefit. These fixed shares are ordained by Allah, and Allah is ever all-knower, all-wise. Surah 4, verse 12. In that which your wives leave, your share is a half if they have no child. But if they leave a child, you get a 1/4 of that which they leave, after payment of legacies that they may have bequeathed or debts. In that which you leave, there, your wives' share, is a 1/4 if you leave no child. But if you leave a child, they get an 1/8 of that which you leave, after payment of legacies that you may have bequeathed or debts. If the man or woman whose inheritance is in question has left neither ascendants nor descendants, no parents or children, but has left a brother or a sister, each one of the two gets a 1/6. But if more than 2, they share in a 1/3, after payment of legacies he or she may have bequeathed or debts, so that no loss is caused to anyone. This is a commandment from Allah, and Allah is ever all-knowing, most forbearing. Notice, this is a commandment from Allah. You have to do this if you're a Muslim. All right, seems a little confusing, but we can make sense of this by imagining a specific situation. Let's say a man has 3 daughters, no sons, 1 wife, and 2 parents. He dies and leaves behind $24,000 as an inheritance. To keep things as simple as possible, let's say that he hasn't left anything to any non-family member as a legacy and that he was debt-free when he died. Watch what happens when we divide up the inheritance. How much of the $24,000 will his daughters inherit? Allah, the All-Wise, tells us. If there are only daughters, no sons, 2 or more, their share is 2/3 of the inheritance. So, 2/3 of the $24,000 will be divided among his 3 daughters. 1/3 of $24,000 is $8,000. 2/3 of $24,000 is $16,000. $16,000 goes to the daughters. No problem there. How much goes to the parents? Allah, the All-Wise, tells us. For parents, a 1/6 share of inheritance to each if the deceased left children. The deceased did leave children, 3 daughters, so each parent gets a 1/6 of the inheritance. 1/6 of $24,000 is $4,000. So the mother gets her 1/6 of the inheritance, $4,000, and the father gets his 1/6 of the inheritance, $4,000. So far, so good. How much does the wife get? Once again, Allah, the All-Wise, has the answer. In that which you leave, there, your wife's share, is a 1/4 if you leave no child. But if you leave a child, they get an 1/8 of that which you leave after payment of legacies that you may have bequeathed or debts. Since the man has children, 3 daughters, his wife gets an 1/8 of the inheritance. 1/8 of $24,000 is $3,000. So $3,000 goes to his wife. Now let's put all of this together. The daughters receive $16,000. The mother receives $4,000. The father receives $4,000. The wife receives $3,000. $16,000 plus $4,000 plus $4,000 plus $3,000 gives us a total of $27,000. If you recall that the man died leaving an inheritance of $24,000, we can conclude that, according to Allah, 24,000 equals 27,000.
This is me while editing. I just wanted to show you guys how stupid David Wood is. Okay, so let's calculate this. By the way, this is not something that the Islamic scholars recommend, but this is a way you can do it. So you have 3 daughters, 1 parent, and 1 wife. That means 6 people. And the amount of money that you have to distribute is 24,000. First, the 3 daughters, they get 2/3 of 24,000, right? So basically the 3 daughters get $16,000. Then after that, you have the amount of money left is 24,000 minus 16,000, which is 8. So you have 8,000 left. Then you have 2 parents who will get 1/6 of 8,000, meaning 1,333.33. By the way, there's a lot of point something numbers, but I'm not adding them. So if the total number doesn't add up, or if there's a point something missing, it's because of that. If you add those point something, it's gonna be a completely full and round number. So now we have money left, 1,000 minus 1,333.33, and you have 6,666.67. The wife gets 6,666.67 by 8, because the wife gets 1/8, that is $833.33 US dollars. Then we have left is 6,666.67 minus 833.33 equal 5,833.34. So, and this leftover, this is basically the leftover. And what you can do is that you can basically equally distribute this amount to all 6 of them, right? So let's calculate. How much do we get? So everyone gets 16,000 plus 1,333.33 plus 833.33 plus 5,833 equals 23,999.66. Again, I didn't add any of the point something numbers, which is why I didn't get exactly 24,000. But if you add those point something numbers, you will get 24,000. So my question to David is, where exactly is this math error? I mean, can you imagine the amount of dishonesty this person has? It just baffles me. There's nothing in the Quran that says that you can't do this math in this way. As a matter of fact, there's nothing in the Quran that says that you have to calculate each of the shares independently and then add them up. There's nothing in there that says that. And yet he did exactly that. David was such a psychopathic liar. He purposefully chose to do it in a way where it looks like that you have a math error, even though there's nothing that says that you have to do them independently and then add them up. So this is a complete lie. He didn't show his audience that you can actually do it another way that is also completely valid. So here basically he's committing the false dilemma fallacy. He's giving his audience a false dilemma. He's trying to show them that, hey, look, this is the only way you can do it, otherwise Quran is false. When there's nothing in the Quran that says that. However, Islamic scholars don't do it this way, or maybe they do, I'm not sure. But yeah, they don't advise that you do it this way. There's a more robust method that they use, but that method is actually kind of complicated, and inshallah I'll explain it later in the video. I'll touch on briefly, but so basically it's the process of owl. If you do it like this, it's impossible to get more than you have. Absolutely impossible. Here, check out how much of a liar this guy is. So if you look carefully at these 2 verses, it actually does not mention what you should do if you have 3 daughters, 2 parents, and a wife. So if you look carefully, you see that verse 11 only mentions what you should do if you have 3 daughters and 2 parents. Verse 12 only mentions what you should do if you have 3 daughters and a wife. Nowhere does it mention what you should do if you have 3 daughters, a wife, and 2 parents. It simply is not mentioned here. So how can this be a math error when the so-called math isn't even mentioned here? These 2 verses are applicable in certain specific situations. Nowhere does it say that they are applicable in every single situation. This shows that the psychopath's claims are completely baseless. He is committing the false equivalence fallacy. He is trying to conflate 2 different arguments that has nothing to do with each other. The 3 daughters and 2 parents situation and 3 daughters and a wife situation are not the same thing. These are 2 completely different arguments and 2 completely different situations that has nothing to do with each other. What you have to do if you have 3 daughters, 2 parents and a wife is simply not mentioned in the Quran. So David is lying to his audience and doing a complete straw man here. This verse was revealed in regarding to a very specific situation. For example, Ibn Kathir mentions this in his tafsir regarding verse 4:11 and 4:12. He says, another hadith from Jabir concerning the reason behind revealing ayah 4:11, Ahmed recorded from Jabir that he said, the wife of Sa'd bin Arabi came to Allah's messenger and said to him, O Allah's messenger, these are the 2 daughters of Sa'd bin Arabi, who was killed as a martyr in Uhud. Their uncle took their money and did not leave anything for them. They will not be married unless they have money. The Messenger ﷺ said, Allah will decide this matter. The ayah about the inheritance was later revealed, and the Messenger of Allah sent word to their uncle commanding him, give 2/3 of Sa'd's money to Sa'd's 2 daughters, and 1/8 for their mother, and whatever is left is yours. Abu Dawud, Al-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah collected this hadith. So, you can read about this in Ibn Kathir's tafsir. So, as you can clearly see, this verse was revealed in regards to a very specific situation. Nowhere does it say that this is applicable to in every situation. He is lying when he says that this is applicable in every single situation. I mean, David the psychopath is making a baseless assertion without any evidence at all. He is committing the strawman argument fallacy. He is arguing based on something that the Quran never said. He is also committing the hasty generalization fallacy as well. He is generalizing the Islamic law of inheritance based on a very specific scenario. Islamic law of inheritance is an extremely complex subject. That is not just based on these 2 verses. There are many different verses and many hadith and Islamic history that all factors into it. This is an entire field of study. You can study this as a major subject in universities. People study this for years. The fact that this psychopath thinks that you can make a 7-minute video on this subject, which people study for years and do graduations on, is really hilarious.
Let me put this argument in a logical form. Premise 1. According to David Wood's theory in Quran verse 4:11 to 12 there is a math error, because the math is not applicable in every situation. Premise 2. If we find anything that contradicts this theory, it will be proven false. Premise 3. According to Ibn Kathir these verses were revealed in regards to a very specific situation. Nowhere does it say that this math is applicable in every single situation, which contradicts David Wood's theory. Conclusion. Therefore David Wood's theory is proven false. Look at how David the psychopath lies to his audience. In his video on Quran verse 929 he used Ibn Kathir to make a case against Islam. He admitted that context is important and even said Ibn Kathir is one of Islam's greatest commentators.
Islam's greatest commentator of all time, Ibn Kathir. Islam's greatest commentator of all time, Ibn Kathir. Islam's greatest commentator of all time, Ibn Kathir.
Yet in this video he hides Ibn Kathir's commentary of the verse 4:11 to 12. He is deceiving his audience by hiding Ibn Kathir's commentary. He is cherry-picking Ibn Kathir. He is only using Ibn Kathir when he can use his commentary against Islam, and ignoring and hiding him from his audience when Ibn Kathir and other scholars goes against him. He is lying to his audience by admitting that context and Ibn Kathir and other scholars are important in one video, then ignoring them in another knowing full well they are important. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of the word lie means to make an untrue statement with intent to deceive. He is making an untrue statement when he says the Quran says this and deceiving his audience, even though he himself admits that the context of a verse and the scholar's opinions are important. Lots of David Wood fanboys have accused me of misrepresenting him. Tell me, how am I misrepresenting him when he himself admits context is important, scholars' opinions are important, and then ignores them completely and makes up his own interpretation? This is the definition of a lie. I'm not the one misrepresenting him.
According to Islam QA, the way to resolve this kind of issue is to reduce the share of each of the heirs proportionally in each case of owl. This is what is fair, so that no one heir will bear the entire shortfall whilst others lose nothing. That is, they will all be affected equally. This method was used by Umar radiallahu anhu. Ibn Abbas also came up with a different solution. However, most scholars use the process of owl.
This new method is called finding the least common denominator because it involves using the smallest common denominator we can find instead of just using the product of the bottom numbers like we did in the first method. To find the smallest or least common denominator of two fractions, we need to figure out what the smallest or least common multiple of the two bottom numbers is. Now, in case you've forgotten, a multiple of a number is just the result of multiplying it by another whole number, like 1, 2, or 3. So here's what we're going to do to find the least common denominator, or LCD for short. First, we'll take the two different bottom numbers and start making multiples of each of them. We start with 1 times the numbers, and then 2 times, and then 3 times, and 4 times, and so on. It helps to arrange these multiples in a small table, almost like a scoreboard, so that you can keep things organized and easy to find. We'll stop making multiples as soon as we find an answer that's the same for both numbers. That answer is called the least common multiple, and it will become our new common denominator. Once we know what the least common denominator is, we have to figure out which whole fractions we'll need to multiply our unlike fractions by to get equivalent fractions with that common denominator. The solution is to use the same numbers that resulted in the common multiple. For example, if you multiplied by 4 to get the common multiple for the first unlike fraction, then you'll use 4 over 4 as your whole fraction. And if you multiplied by 3 to get the common multiple for the second unlike fraction, then you'll use 3 over 3 as your whole fraction for it. Have I lost you yet? Should make a lot more sense after you've seen a few examples. Let's start with this problem. 3 over 8 plus 5 over 24. Step 1 is to take our two bottom numbers and make multiples of them to see if we can find a common multiple. First, let's multiply them both by 1. Well, that's easy. We have 8 and 24. Next, we multiply them both by 2, and that gives us 16 and 48. I still don't see anything in common, so let's multiply them both by 3. 3 times 8 is 24, and 3 times 24 is 72. But look, we have something in common now. We have a 24 in each column. We have found the least common multiple of the numbers 8 and 24, and it happens to be 24. And that makes sense if you remember your multiplication tables, that 3 times 8 equals 24. So now we know we're going to use 24 as our common denominator. But what whole fractions do we need to get it? The answer lies in our multiples chart. To get our common multiple, we had to multiply our 8 by 3. So we're going to use the whole fraction 3 over 3 for our first fraction. And our common multiple for 24 was just itself. We multiplied by 1. So we could use the whole fraction 1 over 1, but we really don't need to since multiplying by 1 won't change anything. We already have the denominator of 24 on that side, so we don't need to change it. Okay, now we multiply. On top, 3 times 3 gives us 9, and on the bottom, 8 times 3 gives us 24, just like we wanted. Now we have like fractions, and we can use our simple procedure to add them. We add the top numbers, 9 plus 5 equals 14, and we keep the same bottom number, 24.
Now let us go to what Islamic scholars would say regarding this issue. Now all these people, the wife, the daughters, and the parents, all of them are ashabul fard. In other words, they have to receive their inheritance in this particular scenario. So the Islamic scholars, what they would do first, they would look at the fractions and get what is called the LCM. Okay, so they would look at 1/8, 2/3, 1/6, and 1/6 and get the LCM, which is 24, and divide the shares according to the LCM. So the person who has 1/8 share, who is the wife, should get 3 out of 24 shares. Who has 2/3 would get 16 out of 24. Who has 1/6 would get 4 and 4 respectively. Now David would, from the time he multiplied the fractions by the total number, he went wrong already. Because the qaida is that the scholars, or the qaida that the scholars have been upon, or the principle that the scholars have been upon, is that you look at the shares and then find out the number of shares that each one gets, and then look at the total number afterwards. So you don't immediately go to the total number as David Wood did. Rather, you go, the last thing you do is go to the total number. Okay? Tayyib. So basically, when you add all of this 3, 16, 4, and 4, you get 27 out of 24. Now basically, when it is, this is called mas'alatul awl, right? Where it is that the numerator is more than the denominator. Now you have 3 cases in Islamic inheritance. If the numerator is less, whatever is left from the numerator is given to the relative asaba, meaning the nearest male relative. If it is the same, then mafi mushkila, no problem. If it is more, then in that case, in the case where it is that it is more, you would strike out the denominator, and the $24,000, which is here, would be divided into 27 different shares. It will be divided into 27 different shares, which is equal to, but to find one share. So one share would be equal to $888.88. All right. So when you find one share, now you multiply it by the amount of shares that each would have received from 24. So the wife, she gets 3 shares. So 3 multiplied by $888.88. The three daughters would get 16 shares, which is 16 by $888.88. The mother would get 4 by $888.88, and the father that also, right? And that would be equal to $24,000 approximately.
The argument can be made that how do we know if that the process of owl is the correct method? Because the Quran itself tells us. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "It is not for a believing man or a believing woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter, that they should thereafter have any choice about their affair. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly strayed into clear error." We read about this in Quran chapter 33, verse number 36. So we know that according to the Quran, we have to listen to the Prophet. So what did the Prophet ﷺ say? Let's take a look. The Messenger ﷺ stated, "The Jews split up into 71 sects. The Christians split up into 72 sects. And this Ummah will split up into 73 sects. All of them are in the fire except one." Someone asked, "Which is that one, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" He replied, "Whoever is upon that which I am upon today and my companions." You can read about this in Abu Dawud 4596 to 4597, Al-Tirmidhi 2640 to 2641, Imam Ahmed 2332, and so on. So we can clearly see that the Prophet ﷺ said those who follow the Prophet and his companion will be saved from the hellfire, which means we have to not only follow the Prophet but also his companions. So since the Prophet told us to follow his companions, that means we can follow the companions in regarding to issues that is not directly addressed in the Quran and the Hadith, and the Prophet's companions, such as Umar radiallahu anhu, while he was the caliph, he came up with a method which is called the owl, with the help of his other companions. According to Islam QA, and David shouldn't have a problem accepting this because he himself said. Now, in one of his recent videos, David Wood quoted Islam Q&A to make a case against Islam. Here, take a look.
Fortunately, the sheikhs at the fatwa site Islam Question and Answer were asked to comment on this topic. And instead of whining, they actually answered the question. For instance, the sheikhs at the fatwa site Islam Question and Answer were asked to comment on this topic.
So, since he has full confidence in IslamQA.com, let's see what they have to say. So, according to IslamQA, no case of owl occurred at the time of Prophet ﷺ or of Abu Bakr. May Allah be pleased with him. Rather, the issue first arose at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. May Allah be pleased with him. And he was the first one to issue a ruling concerning it. When the case was referred to him of a husband and two sisters, either full sisters or sisters through the father, Omar said, Allah has allocated a half to the husband and 2/3 to the sisters. If I start with the husband, then the two sisters will not be able to have their full share. And if I start with the two sisters, and the husband will not be able to have his full share. He consulted the Sahaba concerning this, and they suggested the process of owl, comparing it to the case of debts if they are greater than the estate, in which case the estate is to be divided proportionally so that the shortfall is borne by all creditors. The Muslims adopted that from the time of Umar radiallahu anhu onwards. Then Abdullah ibn Abbas came up with a different view concerning the issue, as he did not favor the view of owl. Then the difference of opinion ceased to exist, and all the scholars adopted the view of Umar radiallahu anhu and the majority of the Sahaba, of the companions. Even Qudama, may Allah have mercy upon him, said in Al-Mughni, today we do not know of anyone who favors the view of Ibn Abbas, and we do not know of any difference of opinion among the contemporary fuqaha concerning the issue of owl. Praise be to Allah. End quote. You can read about this in At-Tahaqiqat al-Madiyah fi Mawahib al-Fardiyah by Sheikh Saleh ibn Fawzan al-Fawzan, may Allah preserve him, page 161 to 166. So from this, I'll make my argument. Premise 1. Allah SWT told us to follow the Prophet in Quran chapter 33, verse 36. Premise 2. The Prophet told us to follow his companions in Abu Dawud 4596 to 4597 and Al-Tirmidhi 2640 to 2641. Premise 3. The companions decided to use the process of owl to solve Islamic inheritance issues. Conclusion. Therefore, the process of owl is the correct method to use when distributing Islamic inheritance. Now, let's take a look at Christianity. Surely David's own religion doesn't have this method, right? Wrong. In Ezra chapter 2, it lists a bunch of people who were held as captives by the Babylonian king. In the verse 64, it clearly says the whole company numbered 42,360. You can read about this in Ezra chapter 2, verse number 64. So, if we count everyone who was taken captive, we should get 42,360, right? This is the amount of people that were taken captive. So, if we count all the people who is listed in the chapter, we should get 42,360 people, right? It seems like a simple math. So let's take a look and let's count these numbers and see if they add up. So first we have the descendants of Parosh, 2,172. Then we have the descendants of Shiptia, 372. Ara, 775. Pahath Moab, 2,812. Elam, 1,254. Jattu, 945. Jakkai, 760. Bani, 642. Bebai, 623. Asgad, 1,222. Adonikam, 666, Big Vai 2056, Adin 454, Atar 92, Bezai 323, Jor 112, Hashum 220, Gibbar 95, Man of Bethlehem 123, Netophah 56, Anatoth 128, Azmavat 42, Kerith and Beroth 743, Rama and Giba 621, Mikash 122, Bethel and Ai 223, Nebo 52, Magbash 156, Elam 1254, Harim 320, Lord and Hadith 725, Jericho 345, Sina 3630, Jeddah 973, Immar 1052, Pashur 1247, Harim 1017, Levites 74, Musicians 128, Gatekeepers 139, the Temple Servants 392, the descendants of Deliah 652. Now let's add all this together, see what happens. So if we add all of them together, we get 29,818. Again, I'm going to say this again, 29,880. Now, if you recall, verse 64 said the total congregation was 42,360, which is almost 12,542 people short. How on earth do you make a mistake like this? This is such a simple math. This is a clear mathematical error in the Bible. Now, according to David, if a religious holy book has mathematical error in it, then therefore it is false. So let me make an argument. Premise 1. According to David Wood's logic, if a religious book has mathematical errors in it, then that religion is false. Premise 2. We see that in the Christian holy book, the Bible, there is a math error in Ezra chapter 2. Conclusion. Therefore, according to David's own logic, Christianity is a false religion. So David, I guess it's time for you to leave Christianity and embrace Islam, since there is an obvious mathematical error in the Bible, while there is none in the Quran. You know what's interesting is that the Islamic law of inheritance is so vast and complex and sophisticated that it played a big role in development and invention of modern algebra. Solomon Gades, in his book The Algebra of Inheritance, a rehabilitation of Al-Khwarizmi, mentions that the Islamic law of inheritance served as an impetus behind the development of algebra, derived from Arabic al-Jabr, by Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi and other medieval Islamic mathematicians. Al-Khwarizmi's Hisab al-Jabr wa Muqbala, the foundational text of algebra, devoted its third and longest chapter to solving problems related to the Islamic inheritance using algebra. He formulated the rules of inheritance as a linear equation. Hence, his knowledge of quadratic equations was not required. Mario Livio, in his book The Golden Ratio, says, Al-Hassar, a mathematician from Maghrib, North Africa, specializing in Islamic inheritance jurisprudence during the 12th century, developed a modern symbolic mathematical notation for fractions, where the numerator and denominator are separated by a horizontal bar. The Dutch cipher he used are also nearly identical to the digits used in the current Western Arabic numerals. These same digits and fractional notations appear soon after in the works of Fibonacci in the 13th century. You can read about this in The Golden Ratio by Mario Livio. In an article by J.J. O'Connor and E.F. Robertson, they mentioned that in the 15th century, Abu al-Hasan ibn al-Qalasdi, a specialist in Islamic inheritance jurisprudence, used a mathematical notation for algebra, which took the first step towards the introduction of algebraic symbolism. He represented mathematical symbols using characters from Arabic alphabet. You can read about this in their article Abu al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Qalasdi by J.J. O'Connor and E.F. Robertson. So we can clearly see that the Islamic law of inheritance from the Quran literally helped develop algebra. Without algebra, you probably wouldn't even have a computer. Chances are, you probably wouldn't even be able to see my video right now if it wasn't for the Quran. Now, Now, other non-Muslims also contributed to this field, but the point is that without the Quranic law of inheritance, he probably wouldn't be able to see my video right now. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. So again, if you're a Christian, which do you think is more likely to be the Word of God? The Quran, which literally helped humans develop modern algebra, which then led to the invention of computers and other technologies, or the Bible, which has obvious mathematical errors in them? Again, you decide. With that, I'm done with this psychopathic clown. Inshallah, I'll see you guys in the next time. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.